I'm Dr. Fiona Lovely, and this is the Not Your Mother's Menopause podcast. I'm taking the taboos of menopause and perimenopause and bringing light to the dark. No bullshit, no shame. It's time for us to gain a new paradigm in female health, out with the old and in with the new, and I'm bringing fresh perspectives from someone in the arena. I've been practicing women's health for nearly 20 years, and I'm spilling the tea on what it means to live at midlife, knowing that the best is yet to come. I'm sharing my Gen X approach to living through this transition. Sassy, a bit sweary, and always honest. Tactical tips and instantly usable information is my aim. I hope to make you laugh and that you learn something new that helps you embrace the change. Together, we bring power to the peri. Onward to the podcast. Hello, my community. It's Dr. Fiona Lovely here, and you've joined me on the Not Your Mother's Menopause podcast. And as we lean into this very busy season of the year, I hope you're all doing well and you're prioritizing your health and well-being and slowing down if you can. I know that's the thing I'm working on right now. And it's actually just the downshift that feels hard. Once you get into the experience of just kind of settling, it just feels so juicy and so nourishing. And I'm loving every minute of it. So I hope you're finding yourself doing the same thing. I have a fantastic guest to share with you today. And this is the episode. I'm going to introduce Carolyn Allen here in just a minute. And this is the episode for you if you find yourself constantly feeling tired, continuously feeling run down. Maybe you get sick a lot. Maybe you just feel like you don't have the strength or the power or the stamina that you used to. This is going to be a conversation about minerals. Not something we've covered here on the show before, but as it turns out, an incredibly crucial conversation. Allow me to introduce mineral enthusiast Caroline Allen. Caroline Allen is a health survivor and mineral enthusiast. On her own journey to health, Caroline found mineral replenishment to be a foundational element that is widely misunderstood. Her research into why minerals are so important in human physiology and how they work in the body has taken her into a broad field of study, including microbiology, molecular biology, cellular biology, quantum physics, agricultural soil science, the study of plant decomposition, and glyphosate toxicity. And friends, we talk about it all in this conversation because it turns out Carolyn has her own health experience that I think a lot of you will relate to, but a lot of the things that we talk about, I know from having my own experiences, but also having thousands of patients that I care for, this will be helpful for a lot of women. As a result of her research, Caroline has become committed to helping people understand how and why mineral depletion affects the body, the systemic nature of glyphosate exposure, and specifically how plant-based humic and fulvic minerals can support healing and optimal health. Caroline is the co-founder and CEO of Beam Minerals, which provides plant-based humic and fulvic mineral supplements for people, pets, and plants. Caroline is also an engaging speaker and a regular contributor to podcasts and health-focused events and programs around the world. And I can say an engaging speaker is right. I've been doing this doctor thing for 20 years, training for a lot of years before that, and I have never heard things on the same level as she shared today, but not in a ponderous way. You know, sometimes science can be just too much, and I think she shares it in a really useful way. So we do talk about glyphosate. For those of you that don't know, that is Roundup and the effects of Roundup pesticide on our, actually, I think that one's a herbicide, on our gut microbiome, on our health. It is biopervasive, and turns out there are ways to get it out that aren't worse than the problem to begin with, which is great. We talk about melatonin, we talk about sleep hormone production, brain health, gut health, lots about gut health, and also about how the minerals have synergists. It's not just when you're taking magnesium at night to help you sleep. Turns out your body also needs phosphorus and calcium in order to complete that triangle, if you will, of the body being able to use the magnesium for cell function, right? Cell physiology. So Caroline and I both tend to be quite sensitive to things. We both have a history of a mold exposure. And so no matter what's going on in the world around us, we can be quite sensitive to new things. And we do speak about this quite a bit, how you can introduce minerals into your regime without causing you more trouble, which is really helpful. Anyways, if you're somebody that has a gluten intolerance or you're celiac, Carolyn shares some really interesting information towards the end of the episode on how glyphosate plays a role. Anyways, I just learned a ton with Caroline Allen from Beam, and I expect you will too. So without further ado, here is my interview with mineral enthusiast Caroline Allen. This is the Not Your Mother's Menopause podcast. I'm Dr. Fiona Lovely, and today I'm joined by the mineral geek, Caroline Allen. I love that terminology. Oh my God. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you because I just know I've heard you speak on other podcasts, and you are full of information that not very many people know about or are talking about. And the whole structure of my show here is to give women the information they need to advocate for themselves and their health and the health of their families as well. So again, Caroline, welcome. And how in heaven's name did you find yourself the mineral enthusiast?
You know, it's actually a really great story for an audience of women because it is truly a woman's story. So I was in a corporate career in high tech actually and working, the big 50, 60-hour weeks and really intense, and had two young kids, and was single parenting part-time, and it was very intense, and I got into a really ill health situation. And I, had gone to lots of different practitioners and doctors trying to find out what was wrong with me and how to heal it. And I had, at that time, this was about 2010, and I had flatlined adrenals. I had really bad inflammation in my gut. Just even though I'd been gluten-free for 7 years or so, I was unable to get past the dysbiosis that I was experiencing. And I also had really bad inflammation in my mouth with receding gums, bone loss, and deep pockets in my teeth. And I'd been to like 3 or 4 different dentists trying to determine why did I have this. I also had recurring sinus infections every 6 months or so. I woke up in the night 4 or 5 times every night. So I had really interrupted sleep. And I also had low thyroid. I'm still working on healing my thyroid, and I do have Hashimoto's. So I was I was struggling. And serendipitously, I met my business partner now, named Dan Howard, and he introduced me to something called plant-based minerals. And they were a liquid, or they are a liquid. And I just took these 2 half-ounce cups of liquid every day that tasted like water. And I'm a person who doesn't love taking supplements in general, and taking pills. So this was really easy. And I was like, sure, great, I'll try that. I started taking it. After 2 months, I started to sleep better first, I noticed. And I also noticed that my sugar cravings, although I'm not a big candy person, I eat a lot of fruit. And my cravings for sugar started to diminish. The afternoon kind of crash, the 2 o'clock crash, started to disappear. And 2 months in, I went to my dentist and we did clean my teeth. She looked in my mouth and she was surprised. She said, my gosh, what's changed? The pH in your mouth has totally changed. The tissues look pink and healthy. What are you doing? And I didn't even really think about it. I was like, I don't know. I said, maybe it's these minerals I'm taking. She was just like, okay, well, keep doing it. Whatever you're doing is good. So 4 months in, I went to my naturopath, and I'd been working with this naturopath for about 2 years, trying to bring my adrenal function up from flatline, complete flatline for 2 years. And in the process, we had tried all sorts of different herbal remedies, et cetera. And at my last visit, she had wanted me to take hydrocortisone orally, which I was not willing to do. Um, but she looked at the results, and my adrenals were 1/3 of the way up the chart with this natural sawtooth pattern, shows healthy function. And she was like, my gosh, this is amazing. What are you doing? And I said, I think it is these minerals that are doing this. So then I went through one season and another season, and I didn't have the sinus infection recurring, which had been really, really painful and hard to deal with. And I also have a history of intense mold exposure in my life in Oregon. And so that also had affected me with all the issues associated with mold. So I would started becoming very curious. I was like, okay, how could these little cups of liquid do what all these doctors and practitioners and pills and potions that I've tried didn't do? And I started studying. And I'm not a practitioner, I'm not a scientist, and I'm not really a researcher, but I am extremely curious, and I have this belief there are no stupid questions, and I can learn anything if I spend the time doing it. So I started reading scientific articles and looking up every single word to understand what it meant. And now I can read scientific articles, and I understand, and I can translate for a layperson what they're actually saying, which is very frustrating to me, because why do they have to do that? But what I learned completely blew my mind. And I went to Dan and I said, Dan, this information has to get out to the public. People have no concept of minerals and how important they are in their nutrition and in their physiology and how they operate in their body. It's sort of like if you bought a car and you didn't know how to fill up the gas tank.
That's a great analogy.
No,
Go on, please.
that's what we're all doing. So what I learned, which were these aha moments, and I kept studying and getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And the first thing I learned was we tend to think about our body like its parts. We've got a heart and lungs, and we've got hormonal systems and adrenal systems, and these different processes and systems in our body, cardiovascular. And when we have a problem with one of them, we go to a specialist who helps us try to solve that problem. But what I realized is that the connecting factor in your entire body is that your entire body is made of cells. And cells are fueled by these little energy generating units that are inside your cells called mitochondria. These mitochondria generate almost all of the energy in your body. And what fuels the mitochondria is two things: minerals and amino acids. Now, your body makes a lot of amino acids, but your body makes no minerals. So I realized that I had become, over my life, extremely mineral deficient. Then when I grew babies in my belly, which also, two children, which also take a lot of minerals from my system to build their fetus, their bodies, that I went into a deep depletion after having two children and breastfeeding without doing any mineral replenishment. So after a while, my body, like all of those, chronic symptoms that might be low level for if you have enough minerals and your body can continually work and clear them out, all of them, my body didn't have enough energy to deal with them. And so all those chronic symptoms just became bigger and bigger and bigger, till the point where I was, flatlined adrenals and just didn't have enough juice.
Mhm.
no gas in the tank or
Well,
very.
this is a common story is I hear women talk about after their pregnancies, they just kind of, and you've got an infant at home, so you don't really have the time or energy to be able to take care of yourself, etc. And then chances are we're having another child fairly quickly, or maybe even a third child fairly quickly. But nobody really pauses to say, okay, how do we replenish what we lost in the pregnancy process? So I think that what you've said there will resonate with a lot of women.
I really love to help people understand this. So if you think, our bodies actually at a cellular level work very much like a plant. Okay, so the cells in a plant. So when a plant grows in the soil, the way it creates all of its structure, whether it's a small pea shoot or a huge redwood tree, is by pulling minerals out of the soil. So if you look around your room and you look at your body, everything that is structural, every single thing on earth that is structural is made of minerals. So when you think about growing a baby in your belly, when you grow that child, how does that tissue and that bone and all of those uh, organs and everything get grown? By pulling the minerals from your system. So it's absolutely key to learn about how to replenish, which is very different from supplement, but
Mhm.
actually replenish minerals, get them all the way back into your cells, which is in your tissue.
Understanding that and like just the things that you've said about mitochondria in particular, or the things that we've learned scientifically about mitochondria, thank goodness my colleagues and I talking about this, those of us in regenerative medicine, anti-aging, longevity, etc., we're actually starting to really understand the importance of this. But minerals, like even as a doctor, I can tell you the only time I've ever been told about minerals was in functional medicine training. They teach you that people like you and I that have gluten intolerance, gut issues, potentially Hashimoto's or other thyroid things, we have nutrient depletion because our GI tract cannot absorb. This is what I've heard. So please, Caroline, set me straight and educate the listeners. This is what I've heard is that through the gut, we just cannot absorb the minerals that are in our food. That was what I was taught. Is that true, or is there more to that picture?
Well, let me explain it. So I think
Please.
that's in some ways it's true, okay? Um, because there's this word that's bandied about and it's called bioavailability. And bioavailability of something like an apple relies on how well you chew it up, how well it gets digested or just broken down in your stomach acid, or first in your saliva and then your stomach acid. And then it ends up in your GI tract where it now has to be broken down further. Now, here's the interesting thing. That apple, for you to absorb the nutrients from that apple, the elements have to be broken down all the way down to their ionic. Ionic means their base chemical components. And that relies on the health of your digestive enzymes, your gut microbiome, the lining of your gut. So first this apple has to get all the way broken down, and only a small portion of it does. The rest goes through and just goes out your elimination tract, okay? But some portion of it gets broken down all the way down to its chemical components. Now, here's the interesting thing about the gut lining. The gut lining, it's lined with these finger-like structures, and they're called villi. They're like little fingers, and they stick out into the stream of stuff that's flowing by. And those fingers are lined with cells that are called epithelial cells. And each one of those cells is lined with receptor sites. And these receptor sites are specific to specific elements. So you have a lot of receptor sites for things that you need a lot of, like magnesium and sodium and calcium and potassium and things like that. But there's also a certain ratio of receptor sites for things that you probably have, most people have never heard of, like molybdenum, vanadium, boron, things that are extremely important to functions in your body. and you have receptor sites for them. Okay, so depending on the health of your gut lining, if you have celiac or if you're gluten intolerant, or or you have a proliferation of candida that's causing inflammation in those villi, your absorption into your bloodstream from your gut may not be very efficient. So what they say is the amount of food that when you take, and I often talk about this with a pill. Let's say you take a pill of calcium and you're thinking it's 240 milligrams of calcium. And you're like, yay, I'm filling up the tank, but it doesn't work like that because that 240 milligrams of calcium has to get broken down all the way down to its chemical components. It's probably made from bone or shell, and
Mhm.
it doesn't break down very well. So maybe only 10 to 12% of it actually gets broken down. Only 7 to 10% of it gets absorbed through, hits one of those catcher's mitts, I call them, receptor sites, and gets absorbed into your bloodstream. And then only 5 to 7% of that amount gets ever what we call assimilated, gets transported into the cell. Now, the thing people don't really understand about minerals is they don't do much in your gut. They don't do much in your bloodstream. Most of them have to get all the way into your cells to make the difference.
Interesting. So, how do we then take minerals in such a way that they're getting into the cell to drive them into cell? What's the best way to do that?
So here's the cool thing. Guess what?
Do
Cellular
tell.
systems have been around for millennia, starting as single cell organisms, multi-celled organisms, and all the way up to these incredible, miraculous set of cellular systems that we are.
Yeah.
That, all these synergistic beneficial organisms and fungi and bacteria that live in our body, when everything's in a natural ecosystem status, we thrive. So nature actually developed the perfect tool. And if you look outside your window and you see all the plants that are growing, all the trees that are growing, these are the nutritional elements that could get delivered by mycelium to the roots of plants. And they are called plant-based minerals, or humic and fulvic. These are two molecules, and they are created when freshwater plants decompose.
Okay.
Okay. So
Yeah.
when freshwater plants decompose, there's a certain set of microbes, and it's a certain sequence. And when it happens, what the result is these two molecules. Now, the beautiful thing about these molecules is that they greatly enhance the absorption and assimilation of minerals into the cell, because they don't only provide all of the minerals your body needs in the natural ratios that your body needs them, but they also provide the delivery system, the enhanced delivery system for those minerals directly into your cells.
You just leave it to Mother Nature to handle it, Just
I mean, this is the thing, exactly. You
we
know,
think we know.
right. And this is the thing that, I talk to people a lot about minerals, and this is one of the things that's not well known about minerals, is that minerals don't work alone. Calcium doesn't work alone. Magnesium doesn't work alone. So
Say
there's
more.
yeah, this is really important, specifically for women who are like me, aging, and a lot of people are prescribing and using magnesium for sleep and elimination. And what I want to tell you is it's not a good solution long term. Once in a while, you could use it, but it is not something you want to do daily. And the best way to illustrate it is this. I work with trainers of elite triathletes and in the aging quadrant. And they came to me and they're like, we're struggling because our athletes are getting osteopenia and osteoporosis. And
Wow.
I
That
said,
shouldn't be at all.
exactly. And I said, well, that's because they've been taking huge amounts of magnesium and potassium over the years in salt-based electrolytes. And when you put a huge bolus of magnesium and potassium into your gut, your body says, there is a huge concentration here. I need to now balance that with phosphorus and calcium. And where do I get that? From the
From the
bones and
bones.
teeth.
Yes.
So
Yes.
when you do this over a long period of time, like these athletes have, and who, women are thinking they're going to just do this for a long period of time, I don't recommend it, especially if you're experiencing any osteopenia or osteoporosis. Okay.
Okay.
So
That
then,
is great information. Thank you for sharing. So it pulls it from the bones and the teeth.
yeah, so minerals work in balanced pairs, quads, and triumvirates. So you cannot, there is, if I showed you, there's a beautiful image. I'm writing a book and we're going to put it in the book, but it's an image of a mineral wheel and it shows all of the beneficial and the good and bad relationships between minerals. So, let's say you're low in iron. Well, you can't just necessarily add iron because there's nothing saying that iron's going to get to where it needs to in your body. You actually have to look at copper and you have to say, okay, what's happening with the copper in that person? So that's just an example, a couple of different examples of the balance. But the beautiful thing is your body knows what it needs, when it needs it, where it needs it, and how it needs it. What we need to do is learn how to get the minerals into the body in a balanced way, a very bioavailable way, so that the body can pick and choose what it needs in its incredible infinite wisdom.
And this is what you and your co-founder, Dan, have done with the B Minerals product, yes?
Yeah, so, and that's really what happened to me. You see, what happened was I just started taking these little half-ounce cups of liquid, and my body suddenly was able to find the resources that it needed and to generate the energy to clear away that inflammation, to start creating a healthy environment for my gut microbiome, to clear away the inflammation in my mouth, to begin to clear away the inflammation in my sinuses, to begin to do the detoxification process to get these toxins out of my body, the glyphosate and that kind of thing. So, it might be useful to talk about how humic and fulvic work.
Please, what have you learned?
Yeah, so let's talk about fulvic first. So fulvic is an amazing molecule. My friends in the world of fulvic and humic research, who are the kind of world-renowned researchers, they call it the God molecule. And the reason they call it that is because
Wow.
it is the only molecule on Earth known today that can change its polarity. So most
Really?
molecules have a certain charge, like a negative or a positive charge, but the fulvic molecule can actually change its charge. Now, the beautiful thing about that is it allows it to do something that's really cool. So the fulvic molecule is called a flavonoid, and it's one of the most powerful flavonoids on Earth because for two reasons. One, because it evolved right along along cellular single-celled organisms and cellular systems, any channel that opens in the cell wall, the fulvic molecule gets a free pass through. Most times, when the reason you have a double lining on your cell is because it's a protective wall. It's trying to keep non-beneficial substances out of your tissues, okay, where they could cause cancer or whatever. So but the beautiful thing about the fulvic is your body recognizes it as a beneficial substance. So any channel that opens up, the fulvic goes straight through. Now that fulvic molecule is a really strong electrolyte and it carries with it 70 plus minerals with it. And it also carries other things that can cling to it, like amino acids and nutritional elements. And it carries those through into the cell. And then it does this crazy thing. It changes its polarity. And those
Wow.
things fall off the molecule, and they're now available in the cell to all the mitochondria in that cell.
That's impressive. If your energy levels feel low and you're experiencing digestive issues like gas and bloating, even when eating healthy, nutritious foods, imagine how you might feel during the indulgence of the holiday season. Adding a high quality enzyme supplement to your routine could make a big difference. I personally recommend Masszymes by Bioptimizers. It's a best in class supplement loaded with full spectrum enzymes for digesting proteins, starches, sugars, fibers, and fats. After you start taking Masszymes, you may notice that you no longer feel bloated after meals and that your belly feels flatter. These powerful enzymes boost your energy by increasing metabolism of your food for fuel. And by improving digestion, your body has more resources to allocate for mental and cognitive function. I can definitely vouch for these enzymes. I take them myself, and they are powerful. For the entire month of November, Bioptimizers, the makers of Masszymes, are having a Black Friday sale, their best sale of the year. All month long, you'll get discounts with my unique code, plus access to up to $100 in free gifts with purchase. You can only get this exclusive deal through my link, special for the audience of the Not Your Mother's Menopause podcast. You won't find this on Amazon or even on the company website. Go to bioptimizers.com/lovely and use code LOVELY to get your discount and free gifts today. All Bioptimizer supplements are best in class. If you don't agree, you can get a full refund for up to 1 year after your purchase, no questions asked. Again, the link to go to right now for this exclusive deal is bioptimizers.com/lovely using the code LOVELY. Links in the show notes. I always say this, Mother Nature knew far better than human beings can think that we can innovate and figure this stuff out. And I get why you found a passion when you started looking at the science of this. It's fascinating.
Isn't it fascinating?
It
I
really
mean, it makes
is.
so much sense. That's the thing
Yes.
that about it that really hit me is that it makes so much sense that everywhere you look, all the things that are alive are cellular systems. So nature had to have a way to get those minerals into the mitochondria. So let's just use the technology that nature developed, which is a phenomenal technology, the only molecule that can change its polarity and deliver this bolus of nutritional elements into the cell. Now, it doesn't stop there though, because now this molecule, this fulvic molecule is in an opposite polarity and it travels around in the cell and it picks up things like heavy metals that have gotten there, nanoplastics, glyphosate, just cellular detritus from the processes in there. And it now, the opening opens in the cell wall and it now carries those out of the cell. Now there's
So is it a detoxifier? Would you use that
is.
language?
It is an
Okay.
intercellular detoxifier. And this is so important for people who are interested in detoxification because it's one thing to get toxins out of your bloodstream. It's another to get them out of your tissues. Now we know when you have weight loss that, often because things like heavy metals and toxins are stored in the fats because that's where your body knows to get to sequester them. So when you lose weight, oftentimes those toxins end up in your bloodstream. But what if you could get rid of them without actually having to lose the weight, or you know what I mean, to not have to lose the tissue where they're stored. So this is an intercellular detoxification agent. So it grabs those toxins, it carries them out into the bloodstream, and then it changes its polarity again. And it drops those things out in the bloodstream. Now its partner, the humic molecule, and the humic and fulvic show up together always. They're always where one is, the other exists. So the humic molecule is very different. It's a large molecule, much larger than a cell. I like to describe it because it's something you can visualize like a Velcro ball. It's extremely sticky on the outside. It's one of the strongest electrolyte molecules known to man. And it has a huge amount of surface area. And it just travels through your bloodstream, picking up biowaste, toxins. It's extremely effective as a heavy metal chelator. It gathers glyphosate and actually chemically bonds that glyphosate into its molecule and builds a biofilm around it so it can no longer have its negative effects in your body. It gathers nanoplastics and other non-beneficial bacteria, viruses, spike proteins. And ultimately, this molecule gets so heavy at a molecular weight, it falls out of suspension and it leaves your body. Now, it leaves the body through all of the elimination channels. So it doesn't rely on a kidney clear kidney or, you know,
Liver, all that.
liver, et
Yes.
cetera. So
Yep. Hmm.
it it will use your tears, your snot, your sweat, your saliva, your
Yes.
earwax,
Wow.
your, just rubbing your hands together, sloughing cells off, and of course also your kidney and liver, so, and feces. So, but it's not a strong detoxifier like doing a detox protocol. So when you use humic, and we'll talk a little bit because you also, like me, are somebody who can easily herx from detoxification. So we'll talk about
Yes,
that for
please.
people who are sensitive. And it's really interesting because, prior to COVID, the number of people who would get what we call Herxheimer responses, which is a detox response, from our humic product, our microboost, was like 0.001%. I mean, a very, very small percentage of people. And now it's like 10%. So the influx of COVID in people's systems has made a huge number of people much more sensitive, me in particular. So since COVID, if I just take some of our microboost and take it as a shot directly, and I do that for 3 days, I'll get pimples. I'll get a rash behind a kind of a Hy-Vee kind of rash behind my knees. Or, in the crevices in my body.
Yes. Yep.
So, but as long as I do this, which is I just put it in my glass of water and I
Hmm.
drink it every day, I have no symptoms. Now, for people who are just starting and they know they're very sensitive, they just need to use what we call the slow introduction method. So the
Hmm.
slow introduction method would be to take a quarter teaspoon, like a very small amount, and put it in a 16-ounce glass of water and drink it over an hour. Set it wherever you are, put it in your water bottle, drink it through the day. And then you do that for a few days, maybe 3, 4 days. You add another quarter teaspoon and you just slowly titrate up to the full half ounce. And I have found only one person over the years, and she had very, very complex health issues. She was only one person over the years who was not able to introduce and use the humic product by titrating. And sometimes it did take, up to 3 months for somebody. It's absolutely possible to do.
So, for the listeners, just to come back to this term, Herxmer reaction or Herxheimer or Herx, it's basically when there is a problem with detoxifying and it causes you to have symptoms that are quite often worse than what you might have wanted to detoxify to begin with. I know for me, Caroline, when I had a mold exposure a few years back, and I do talk about it on the show, so people listening to the show have heard me speak about it. I found that the binders were the thing that gave me the most symptoms. And just for the listener, that's the thing that I would take to pull the mold out of the gut safely and take it out of my body. And that was a difficult thing for me, whereas I know a lot of people have had that experience as well. And so I think there's a lot of us that want to detoxify. We're aware of things like glyphosate being a problem and the microplastics. Oh my God, someone served me a tea the other day, a tea bag with one of those little plastic baggies. And I'm like, nope, you can take that back. Thank you very much. Or I just open the little baggie up and throw
Yeah,
the loose
that's
tea
way.
in.
Right.
Yeah, because I've heard that that is literally billions of particles of plastic in those little bags. Anyways, like what was wrong with the paper bags? They were fine. There was no problem there.
Totally agree. I'm like, what?
I
Yeah.
know, what are you doing?
What are you doing? Making
So
this
silly.
non-recyclable little thing. What is the point of that? Yeah.
Exactly, exactly.
Well, one thing I wanted to say about the Herx thing is, people, it's scary. When you have it, it's scary. It can be scary. Suddenly you have hives or maybe you have some aching joints or maybe your kidneys ache or you have diarrhea or you have, there's a huge number of symptoms that can
Yeah.
occur. We do have the great article on our website, if you want to put it in your notes, that really helps demystify Herxheimer reactions. But one thing I want to say to people is, you also have to remember this is your body saying, oh my gosh, I am so glad I can finally get rid of all this stuff and I'm going to do it now.
Yes.
So the problem with a lot of binders that are used is it's hard to titrate them. If it's in a pill form,
Mm.
you may have to, you know, empty that pill out all the way down to, a quarter of that pill or less if you're just beginning and you really have some high levels of toxicity. So, or potential, Herc situations. So, and people who have autoimmune tend to be more prone to Herxheimer as well. So, you know, I just I think it's important for people to recognize that the trick with detox is go slow, go
Mhm.
gentle and slow. And the biggest thing I want people to really recognize is your body is a natural ecosystem, and it's filled with all these microbiomes around, in your mouth and in your, gut, and in your, if you're a woman, in your vagina, and, all in your ears. And, you have these microbiomes all over your body. And if you think about in nature, when we, do a big thing like this, it's not usually good. It's
Mhm.
like cut down the whole forest, or, you
We're
know,
impatient.
or so what we really want to do gentle, slow changes. So that's why I like to call it the slow introduction method. Don't just hit your body with a detox element. Introduce it. Say, hey, here's a little. What do you think? Is this gonna? How does this feel?
Mhm. Mhm.
And give it some time.
Great advice. We are impatient as human beings. We want to do all the things all at once, be instantaneously healed. And I want to come back to something you said earlier about when we go through the process of losing weight. What you said was that the fat acts as a safe storage for the body. So if there's anything that the body feels it cannot easily keep in storage or can't eliminate for whatever reason, let's say your liver's busy doing other things, or your kidneys aren't working the way they're supposed to, or bowels, or whatever, you're not eliminating through the feces, then the body will just innately go, whoop, we'll put it over here to storage. Now, I always thought that was a fascinating conversation because that got missed from the whole why do we carry extra weight to begin with? Well, listen, we're toxic, and lots of us are, we're living in a toxic world, and lots of us are the canaries in the coal mine. We're the sensitive ones
Yeah.
that just, and you can see it in families too. We're saying it's a genetic thing. Is it, or is it just that y'all lived on the farm for so many years and there was glyphosate fault? My grandparents were farmers, and I remember my grandfather, he never used a mask or gloves or anything when he was handling the pesticides, etc. And so I know that was around a lot when I was a kid. And thankfully, I didn't live on the farm. I just visited. But I think there's a lot of people that probably have had those exposures. And I want to come back to glyphosate, but I just want to sort of wrap up that part of that whole fat storage thing. We've got, isn't it a quarter of the population in America is taking one of the GLP-1 agonist medications? And with that comes a huge loss of weight for, as a third of the body composition for a lot of people. And there's, health benefits that are showing up with that. Because, of course, as soon as you take the inflammation out, as soon as you take make the metabolic system healthier, then we're healthier as human beings. I don't know if we're always doing it the right way. Doctors aren't telling people the important things like, well, you need to protein load and you should probably be lifting weights so you don't lose muscle, but that's for another podcast.
Yeah.
Finding that gentle detoxifying pathway for you if you're taking one of these medications, and even if you're not, if you're on a weight loss regime, really, really important. So we safely pull those because it's true. And I have seen patients over the years that have done, whatever, for whatever reason, have lost weight, and then all of a sudden find themselves in a toxic soup. They're
Yeah.
just in a mess of symptoms.
Yeah.
And so a gentle way is the minerals, is what you're saying. Let's talk about that a little more, please.
Well, and so, first of all, also, when you do a detox protocol, as soon as you finish that protocol, you're back to being exposed to all sorts of different toxins, et cetera, in our environment. So again, I'm going back to nature, and, nature uses humic and fulvic as the way to detoxify cells, single cells, and also to detoxify cellular systems. So they are there, your body recognizes them, your body knows how to utilize them immediately, and they're a fantastic tool. And particularly for glyphosate, it's well known, many of the the glyphosate protocols that are out there that really are well known as working, the glyphosate removal protocols are using humic and
Mm,
Cellcore. I don't know if you've heard of Cellcore, but
I have.
Cellcore, the main part of what they're using is humic. So,
Interesting.
and it's because of this capacity to adsorb. So adsorb means keep it from absorbing into your system. And
Mm.
it literally sequesters the glyphosate. I think I was probably had a lot of glyphosate toxicity at the time, and I think that's one of the things that was I was struggling with in my gut, and that the humic really healed the glyphosate toxicity I was experiencing. I didn't
Yeah,
really test it at that time, but
yes, and of course we can test now. We know that. By the way, for the listeners, glyphosate is Roundup, so pesticide, fungicide, herbicide of some kind. By the way, I have a neighbor that wanders around his yard in the summertime with his little glyphosate spray, and I said to my husband, I said, and he's got a wife that is wheelchair bound with an autoimmune disease that she's had for 30 years. Okay. And so, but he's sort of my dad's generation. And is he going to want to listen to? I said to my husband, I said, can you just trip him and like snatch the bottle? Like, I mean, trip him and catch him. Don't hurt him, but snatch the bottle away. I don't want that anywhere near myself, my pets. We just have no idea how bad that is for us.
it's way worse. And if we want to talk about what it actually does in the system,
Please.
we could. Do you want to talk about that?
I sure do.
So
Yes.
what glyphosate does, and this is so important for people to recognize, and this is why you really need to eat organic and non-GMO. If you're eating oatmeal in the morning, please eat organic non-GMO oats, because the way that they dry oats is they spray glyphosate on it as a drying, it's called an excipient, and it dries it more quickly. Actually, that may not be the right word, but anyway,
Is it desiccant? It acts as a desiccant.
that's a word.
Yeah.
What happens when glyphosate gets in your system is it does a few things. One, it interrupts the development of the sleep hormones. Okay, so melatonin development is interrupted. That's one of the things. The other thing is that it creates leaky gut. So you have there's a set of enzymes in your gut called CP450, and these enzymes they call them the first line of defense. So your gut is lined with these epithelial cells, and these cells literally push up against each other, and they create a barrier from food particles and everything that's inside your gut from getting into your bloodstream and into your cavity of your abdomen. Okay, so you want that to be a really what we call tight junctions. When you hear that word tight junctions, it's literally
Mhm,
like cells pushing up against each other. And
mhm,
what happens is that the enzymes which produce that capacity of these cells to stay tight together is interrupted, the development of that enzyme. And of course, guess what? These are the same enzymes that are associated with celiac and with gluten intolerance. So it is quite interesting that I was severely gluten intolerant. I've never been tested for celiac, but severely gluten intolerant since I was a child. But as I've gotten healed from, as the minerals have supported my body in healing itself, still don't eat gluten, but once in a while I do get gluten, but it doesn't cause the same symptoms that it used to, because I have much better microflora and a balanced microbiome.
and an ability to clear out anything that's not serving you, which is
Yes.
fantastic. Protein and healthy muscle are the organ of longevity. Do you struggle to put on muscle, lose weight, or get enough protein each day? It's a common concern, but there's help. I prefer Keon Aminos to get my daily essential amino acids. Keon Aminos ensures you're getting the essential amino acids from protein your body needs to rebuild muscle, recovery, keep energetic, and be strong. Keon Aminos is a clean source, transparent formula that gets mixed into water and tastes good. It's suitable for all diets, is gluten-free and dairy-free. It helps me feel full and hydrated and ready to go. I feel strong and I recover from activity quicker when my protein tank is full. Would you like to get better protein intake and supplement with Kion aminos? Please go to getkion.com/lovely, where Kion is offering 20% off for listeners of the show. There's a risk-free 60-day money-back guarantee. That's getkion.com/lovely. And I'll drop the link in the show notes. Thanks, Kion.
So the other thing that glyphosate does is it mimics glycine, which is an amino acid, one of the most prevalent and used amino acids in the body. And it mimics it so well that your body thinks it's glycine. And this is actually how it kills plants. So, they spray glyphosate on fields of, let's say, corn, and it kills all the weeds, but the corn has been genetically modified to not be affected by the glyphosate. So the way it kills those plants is a couple different ways. It chelates out certain metals like copper, and I can't think of what the other one is. And it also gets in the way, the plant absorbs it thinking it's glycine, and then it kills the plant. So what happens in your own body is your body absorbs it thinking it's glycine, and now you have this irritant, this oxidative stress continually happening in your body. But one of the other things, particularly for women, that's really important because it affects cognition, is that actually it supports the bioavailability of aluminum in your body, which is stored in your pineal gland and calcifies and affects the pineal gland and the pituitary gland. And these are really important for cognition, the pituitary in particular, with development of melatonin and or release of melatonin in your body. So who knew that our sleep issues that we're having that are ubiquitous could have a lot to do with glyphosate toxicity.
Wow. I mean, that was like a master class on everything glyphosate does.
Thanks. I hope it was.
Yeah, it was good. It was great because it wasn't until I found myself gluten intolerant at the age of 40 and going, why the heck did this happen? And started going down the rabbit hole of the research and the information. And here in Alberta, we actually have homegrown research through the Children's Hospital research facility here that showed that children with celiac disease grew at the exact same rate as the amount of glyphosate we started using in our crops. So I knew there was yeah, I knew there was a connection, and it's not to be, I still can't believe that you can still buy it. That's the thing. We can go into the hardware store and still buy it here. It's bananas. Now, what you said about glyphosate affecting the pineal gland and the aluminum, how interesting. Aluminum is one of those things that's long been thought to be connected to Alzheimer's disease in particular.
Exactly.
And then the sleep epidemic. Wow.
So, and we've seen huge help. So the beautiful thing about the humic and fulvic is they cross the blood-brain barrier. So they also help the detoxification of that aluminum out of your brain.
In a very safe and gentle way.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
So there's so much, you can see why I spend my life talking about minerals and about humic and fulvic because it makes sense that nature would have provided something. We've lived for millennia already, and cellular systems have been on the earth. There had to be a way to support the uptake of nutrients into cells and for the intercellular detoxification, and that's what these represent.
Yes. So you said that the fulvic and humic come from decomposed plants. Is that right? Can you talk about that a little more, please?
Well, so let's talk about where the material that we use, and there's some other materials we'll get into. So think about the world 65 million years ago when the dinosaurs lived, and a meteor hit the Earth. It hit the Yucatan, And in a few hours, it killed about 75% of all life on Earth. And those rainforests died and decomposed, and they became a substrate of Earth. And the Himalayas, they have something called shilajit. That's a humic and fulvic substance. In the British Isles, they have peat, again, same kind of substance. In the Amazon basin, they have something called black soil, and we have a material. The material we use is called humate, and it's from the Southwest United States, and it comes from about 10 to 12 feet below the surface of the earth, which means it hasn't had any contact with modern pollutants from acid rain or any of that kind of thing. So this humate material is a black, incredibly rich black crystalline substance. And, like one person would need in a year, that it's so rich that you might use a quarter cup of it for an entire
Mhm.
year. I mean, that's how incredibly concentrated it is, because the entire rainforest that decomposed. The important thing to recognize is it only comes from the decomposition of freshwater plants. So people often ask me, well, what's the difference between this humic and fulvic stuff and something like chlorella or spirulina that comes from the
Mhm.
ocean, or maybe ormus or Quinton water that comes from the sea, from seawater? And I say, well, those things are great sources of mineral content. The beautiful thing about the humic and fulvic is that they also provide the delivery system for the minerals, for those minerals into the cells. And they do have the full spectrum of minerals that your body needs. And the Quinton and some of those other things do have a lot of minerals, but it's not the full spectrum. Um, I did want to mention something about the humic molecule that is a really cool thing. I forgot to mention it. So
Please.
what it does is it hangs out in your bloodstream, and it interacts with the proteins in the cell wall, and it causes your cell to open more channels. So if you're in a room right now, and let's say you have one door and one window, and those doors and windows are open, then a certain amount of air can come in and out. If you had four doors and four windows, much more air could go in and out regularly. So what we call it cell wall permeability, it increases cell wall permeability substantially. And this is really important for many of us because a lot of us have eaten processed foods. We've cooked our olive oil or eaten something with canola oil, or, we go to restaurants and they're using all these seed oils. And one of the things that seed oils do is they clog the lining of the cell. They literally get stuck in the cell, and they clog it. So they make your cells less permeable. So when you put humic into your system, you actually allow your cells to become more permeable so that more nutrients can get in and more toxins and biowaste can get out.
Wow, that's a new one. I have not heard that before. That's fascinating. I mean, we
Yeah.
know seed oils are a problem, but for many reasons, it turns out. Okay, so you've talked about the fulvic and the humic, and B Minerals has two different products for
Yeah.
that, correct?
We do. So we have we have our electrolyzed product. So the electrolyzed product, it's this green bottle,
Mhm.
and we call it next generation hydration. And we call it that because of its ability to support hydration. Many people are using salt-based electrolytes, which I say what they do is they irrigate, they don't hydrate. So they might get a lot of minerals into your gut. One of the things you have to really look at is that your gut, your digestive tract is a freshwater system. So using salt-based electrolytes on a regular basis is really not healthy for the gut microbiome. If you There's lots of reasons, partly because they create imbalance, but also because they're just salt. If you drink a glass of salt water, it will make you feel nauseous. So, and particularly athletes are the ones who really are aware of this, because if they've used a lot of salt-based electrolytes, their guts are really uncomfortable, and they're like, what do I do? And I tell them, give me a month and just use my electrolytes as your electrolyte replenishment, and then they never go back. And
Mm.
we have athletes who are really intensely doing, tennis tournaments and things like that, and they're the only ones who are coming off the court not cramping, not feeling heat stroke, because they're hydrated. They're actually
Mhm.
hydrated.
Mhm.
So The electrolytes, you just take half an ounce every day. That's half a cap. And then the micro boost is the humic supplement. And
Mm-hmm.
so this one we call it complete mineral supplement. So it's really the thing that's going to provide the full spectrum of minerals that you need. So both together, they provide that full spectrum of minerals plus the increase of the cell wall permeability, plus the delivery system for the minerals into your cell, the detoxification of the cells, and the detoxification of your full system. Like, what could you ask for more? Is kind of what I say.
Yeah, and
Well,
plant-based too.
people ask why they're separated because, and there are other products out there that either are just fulvic or they're fulvic and humic together. They're really tools. So this electrolyze, most of us are drinking bottled and filtered water, which is one of the reasons that we are mineral deficient. And it's why there's such a huge rise in mineral deficiency in kids in particular, because the parents are saying, drink this bottled water or drink this filtered water, which, I understand you need to do that. But you want to remineralize your water, and this is a fantastic tool. So every time I fill up my glass of water, I put a splash of this in there. You can't get too much.
That's
You
what
don't have
good.
to worry about getting too much.
Okay.
You're going to take your half ounce of these as your daily foundational amount, but why not remineralize your water as well? The
Mm.
beautiful thing about these, because they're trace minerals, they're very small amounts given you're you're doing an influx of minerals every
Mhm.
day. Um,
Mhm.
and they're in very small, these are already at the level where they're ready for absorption. They require no digestion at all, zero digestion. So
Wow.
they don't rely on the health of your gut lining. They don't rely on the health of your digestive enzymes because they're already at that level. People ask us, well, what kind of magnesium is in your product? Is it magnesium chloride or magnesium gluconate or whatever? And I say, no, think of the periodic table. It's magnesium. So they end up, and the micro boost ends up being a great tool. Let's say you go out to a restaurant and you get some
Mhm.
gluten and you
Mhm.
feel that funky feeling. You just take another, for you, you'd have to be careful, but
Mhm.
once you get acclimated, your body gets acclimated, you could just take an extra quarter to half cap before you went to bed that night and you wake up without a hangover. It works for alcohol. My son's friends like it because they imbibe, and they
Yeah.
literally came and asked me for the micro boost because after they imbibe, this is the only thing that really works for their hangovers.
Yes.
Also great if you feel a cold coming on because it creates a non-beneficial environment for viruses. Um,
Right. And you're saying for those of us that are sensitive, this is the Herx conversation again. It's a quarter teaspoon for a few in your bottle of water, in your glass of water for a few days, and then you can ratchet it up sort of a quarter of a teaspoon at a time.
Exactly. And then anytime you feel anything, let's say you suddenly start getting a pimple or something, you go, oh, okay, I'm gonna go back to the other amount, the lower amount for another 4 or 5 days. And
Mhm.
then you're gonna start it, then you keep and over it, again, as I said, some people it's taken 3 months. That's probably the longest. But you just do it really slowly because your body will adjust and your body will make use of it. It just needs to do it in its own time so that you don't get those symptoms.
You know what amazes me too is how these things they don't taste like anything. There's
Right.
there's no flavor to it. I mean, I see you drinking it and it looks the color of tea, but there's no flavor to it.
And that's partly because of our proprietary extraction process. So we use no chemicals. Um, a lot of the products that are out there that are humic and fulvic, either they've added other things, which I'm kind of like, why do you want to improve on Mother Nature? So
Yes.
they take it into their lab and then they add other things which have bad flavors. Or they'll flavor it because they think people like a flavor. And I'm like, well, why not have no flavor and then I can add it to anything. Um,
Mhm.
that seems, and plus, as soon as something has a flavor, it has to be digested. That's
Mm.
the beautiful thing about zero flavor, zero. This is just minerals and water, no digestion required. In fact, the fulvic, because the molecule is much smaller than a cell, the beautiful thing is here, we have the spray. So this is a fulvic spray. When
Mhm.
I spray this I use it actually on my eyes because I spend a lot of time on the computer and I get a lot of eye strain. So I literally just blink my eyes and spray this. In a single cell in your eye, there could be up to 40,000 mitochondria.
I had
Yeah.
no idea.
Yes, in a single cell. So I've just literally, that's absorbing, and it creates no sting. Absolutely. It feels like you feel like your eyes are drinking. It feels so good.
Well, and I have some of these on my desk next to me because you were kind enough to send me some samples to try. And I love this product. And it comes with different essential oils in it, which you probably don't want to spray that in your eye. But we've
Right.
got the bergamot and we've got lavender, and then there's a eucalyptus one as well.
Yeah, and so the Happy Lights is a huge one. So Happy Lights has bergamot in it. With most people, when they smell bergamot,
Mhm.
your sniffer, your olfactory system is connected with your lower brainstem, which is where neurotransmitters are triggered.
Mhm.
And so when most people smell bergamot, it actually releases endorphins in the body. It triggers the release of endorphins. So you can change your mental state. Let's say you feel, for people who have panic or depression or are dealing with anxiety, I mean, it is our next beloved product after our advanced set.
Huh, I love it. Well, it's great. It's fantastic. By the way, my husband's a mountain biker. I think I told you he's from Colorado, so I'm pretty
Oh,
sure y'all are just born with Birkenstocks on and a bicycle in your hands.
I've
That's what
never
he tells
owned
me.
Birkenstocks, just so you know.
Say again. I didn't. I
I
missed
said,
that.
I've never owned Birkenstocks, but
Oh,
that's because I'm
okay.
short.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Um, I happen to love my Birks in the summertime, but again, I'm a chiropractor, so I'm pretty sure Birks and tie-dye is kind of how we roll, you know. We get handed a pair when we graduate. Anyways, in the summertime, he tends towards cramping, and so I gave him one of these to put in his biking kit. And he came back from a ride and he said, "What in the hell's in that? That was great. It got rid of my cramp right away." And I came, of course, he comes back with it half empty. I'm like, I don't think you're supposed to use that much.
Well, you can, so we've done a lot of some bike races here, and they have these gravel races. They're mountain biking races, and they're 100-mile races. They go out 50 miles and come back 50 miles, and we'll be at the aid stations, and they come into those aid stations. They're cramping, their arms are cramping, their lower backs, their legs, they're shaking, and pickle juice, and there's these salt-based flavored electrolytes. And they don't go for the salt-based thing because they know they're going to trash their stomach and they're going to end up with diarrhea.
Mhm.
And they don't, and the pickle juice is just, salt water. So they don't really want that. And they're like, what do you guys have? And we give them a drink of our electrolytes, and literally 30 seconds later, they're like, whoa, what just hit me? That's
Mhm.
incredible. I can feel that working. And it's true because the molecule is so small that it starts absorbing through the mouth, the throat. By the time it hits your stomach, and especially if you're in deep depletion, your body is grabbing that mineral content immediately. So, and then the other thing we do is we spray legs. So people come in with their legs and are really tight and cramping. And we spray them down on their way out on the 50 miles. And on the way back, they're like, oh, come on, spray them again. I need more. That was amazing. So it really works.
It's quite amazing. Well, I have learned so much today. Thank you for bringing this great information to me, to my listeners as well. I'll be sharing it with patients in the clinic as well. There's nobody's talking about this, and it is basic stuff. We're talking about cellular physiology. It literally is the basic stuff of life. And as you said at the top of the conversation, it's like buying a car, but nobody shows you how to put gas in it. I mean, it just is such a good analogy. So if people want to find out more about you and the B Minerals products, where do they go, please?
Well, if they want to find out about the products, they can go to Beam, like Beam of Light, beamminerals.com. And if they want to contact me, they can contact me at themineralgeek.com, or I think it's just mineralgeek.com. And I didn't make that up, just so you know. People started calling me that as I couldn't stop talking about minerals.
I can see why you're so passionate for it. But I always say we learn so much when we are listening to somebody who's super excited about. I'm one of those weird people that gets excited about menopause. Like I could talk about it all day, every day for the rest of my life, right?
That is
So,
so cool.
Carolyn, I get it. I totally get it. So, anyways, B Minerals at B Minerals on Instagram, bminerals.com is the website. Is that right? Did I say the right website?
So I think that's correct.
Yes, good,
Yeah.
good. And
Minerals.com.
yes, fantastic. I love these products. I'm surprised that after 20 years in practice, I had not heard of this before very recently. So thank you so much for bringing it again to the show and onto my radar for sure.
Yeah, thank
So, yes, you're welcome. You're welcome. I have a final question I ask all my guests, and because we're trying to move the needle here on the menopause experience for women, and I think wisdom is one of the best ways we do it. And as you, I'm sure, are aware, the wisdom of humanity has been, let's say, deglamorized in recent generations, but not anymore. We're making it different. So, knowing what you know now with your life experience, everything you've learned, Caroline, what would you tell your younger self?
you know what I would tell my younger self is to be gentle
Mm,
with myself. You know, so many things are coming at me, at all of us, and coming at me, and have, there's the past challenges and traumas, and then there's all the stuff that's coming at you, trying to make a life and, become who your true self, or, all of that. And the other thing is, uh, there's a song, and it's by a man named Trevor Hall, and it's called "You Can't Rush Your Healing." And that really that's the thing that I would tell my younger self, is you can't rush it. It's just like a flower blooming. It just has to take its own time.
like a flower blooming. I love that. I often say healing happens at the speed of safety. And that
Oh,
is something we just need to learn much better. And oftentimes, like you, we have to learn it the hard way.
right. Exactly. Exactly. But there is healing. And that's what I really am a stand for women and for people, is we can heal.
I love it. That's a good reminder for all of us.
Mm.
Caroline Allen, CEO and co founder of Beam and the Mineral Geek, thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much.
The information and other content provided in this show, or in any linked materials, is not intended and should not be construed as medical advice, nor is the information a substitute for professional medical expertise or treatment. We are doctors, but we aren't your doctor. Seek your doctor's opinion. If you or any other person has a medical concern, you should consult with your healthcare provider or seek other professional medical treatment. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something that you have heard in this podcast or in any linked materials. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. The opinions and views expressed on this page and in this show have no relation to those of any academic, hospital, health practice, or other institution. Thank you.